Patrick, if I may, you also mentioned the Supreme Court said 60 days for the new vote. That's roughly 2 months. Do we know what the process would entail if the earlier process has been faltered? What new measures are to be taken?
What will happen is that after these, then the commission, the electoral commission, will have to prepare for the next poll because it only has 60 days and already the clock has started counting. So they'll put their systems in place to ensure that they conduct an election that will satisfy both players that it will be a free, fair and verifiable election, because already we've seen foreign envoys come out and say that this particular decision to nullify the presidential poll is an example for Africa and the world. So they want to see IEBC put in place measures that will ensure that the next poll that has been ordered will be free, fair and verifiable. Makes sense?
All right, thank you so much, Patrick Amimo, senior journalist there from Kenya. Well, still on Kenya, the opposition leader Raila Odinga has called for prosecution of the Electoral Committee officers for their role in the electoral process following the decision by the Supreme Court to nullify election results. In his comment, he stated that the Supreme Court decision is a historic one for the people of Kenya.
This indeed is a very historic day for the people of Kenya, and by extension for the people of the continent of Africa. For the first time in history of African democratization, a ruling has been made by a court nullifying irregular elections of a president. This is a precedent-setting ruling, and they are very historical. As has been said by my other colleagues, we have no faith at all in the Electoral Commission as currently constituted. They have committed criminal acts. Most of them actually belong to the jail. And therefore we are going to ask for prosecution of all the Electoral Commission officers who have caused this monstrous crime against the people of Kenya.
Well, let's now take a look at what we know so far. Kenya's Supreme Court overturned the results of last month's presidential election, calling for a new vote within 60 days. Well, 4 out of 6 judges said irregularities harmed the integrity of the vote. The judges said Kenya's Electoral Commission had not conducted the vote in line with the Constitution. After an opposition alliance challenge which said the vote was hacked, it said the electronic system used in the process had failed. While the election results had put President Uhuru Kenyatta more than 1 million votes ahead of Raila Odinga of the opposition NASA alliance. Today's court ruling appears to be a major victory for the opposition alliance. It had initially said it did not trust the court to make a fair decision, but later went ahead with a legal challenge, well, calling an unprecedented announcement in Africa. The judgment is to be published within 21 days. Well, joining us to talk more about this is Mr. Emmanuel Ona, we can call you a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Now, how does this annulment impact Africa's political system, essentially?
Well, I think it is a very positive development. This is the first time it is happening in any of the African countries. Usually we have elections and everybody knows that the elections are mad, and yet we have to take it. Some people will cite security reasons, some people will cite issues of the state, that if these elections are not allowed as they are, there could be some other instability and all that, and the state could even crumble. So for the first time, we have seen a situation where the political system in Africa has stood up to its commitment.
Do you think this judgment showcases the effective separation of powers we have?
Yes, to some extent it does, because it now has shown that the judiciary can play its role, just as the executive, through its parastatal, the Electoral Commission had done the elections, and there were disagreements. Every other thing was pushed to the next organ of government, the judiciary, to interpret. And as I said, for the first time, that organ of government that has been able to live up to its expectations. So in a way, we can say that separation of powers is becoming evident.
The norm. Can we say also that this perhaps we will see the end of sit-tight presidents in Africa? Would you call it that?
Well, I also want to sound a note of caution, because we are just seeing a process in midway. In other words, the election has held, and then the courts have voided the elections. Let us see what happens from now onwards, so that we cannot really sing Uhuru. Uhuru Kenyatta, his name is Uhuru, and Uhuru, I think, in their language means something like freedom, So I think we cannot really sing Uhuru yet until we see how the political process, will go through, But so far, so good. There is some ray of hope.
It's also interesting to note that international observers said it was sort of free and fair. What do you think? Involving international observers in the forthcoming 60 days again for Kenyans and indeed for elections in the continent.
I think the role of international observers in African elections have always been debatable, Whereas some people have always felt that they have exercised some positive roles in African elections, at least by helping to point out irregularities. Others have also said that many a time what they observe are not true because they can't really understand the local situations the way that the local people themselves understand it. And I think the attitude in Africa has always been to let everything go. Let us just allow the elections to go. At least having elections is better than not having it at all. That is the view that we have. We have even seen it here, even in the Kenyan elections. President Obasanjo immediately gave out an epistle where he was urging Kenyans to allow the elections go, that even if there were manipulations, we should just let it, maybe the next one will be better. That is always the attitude. But I think that what has happened in Kenya is that the people themselves, they are in the best position to know exactly the kind of election that has been held. And for the first time, the courts have reflected the voice of the people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Ona, for joining us on Network Africa today.
Thank you.
Well, coming up after the break, science, technology, engineering and mathematics is an area that is not usually ventured in by women. So Abisoye Ajayi Akinfolari is trying to encourage girls in STEM education. Do join us again.